The grand hall of the Zevathian Royal Palace gleamed under the glow of artificial starlight. Hundreds of dignitaries from across the galaxy had gathered, their eyes fixated on the princess standing on the ceremonial dais. Princess Velara, heir to the throne of the Zevathian Empire, had summoned them all for a declaration that had been shrouded in secrecy. Whispers rippled through the hall. What could be so important? A political alliance? A royal decree? None could have guessed the truth. Velara's golden eyes scanned the crowd before locking onto a single figure at the back. He was human, standing rigidly, clad in a simple dark tunic that contrasted sharply with the extravagant garments of the alien aristocrats around him. His presence alone was enough to stir confusion and murmurs of discontent. Humans were not frequent guests in the heart of the Zevathian Empire, let alone in the royal palace. But Velara knew who he was. And that was all that mattered. She took a deep breath, steadying her voice as she spoke. Years ago, I was but a child, lost in the endless void of space. My escape pod, damaged and adrift, should have been my tomb. But I was saved. She paused, her voice carrying through the silent chamber. Not by a Zevathian. Not by an ally of our empire. I was saved, by a human. Gasps echoed through the room. Many of the gathered nobles exchanged skeptical glances, some whispering among themselves. A human? Impossible. Humans were unpredictable, dangerous, uncivilized, as some of them liked to say. Velara continued, her voice unwavering. That human stands before you today. She gestured toward the man at the back. Captain Dorian Hale. All eyes turned toward him. He didn't flinch under their scrutiny. He had faced worse. War, betrayal, the cold depths of space. But this moment felt heavier than any battlefield he had ever walked upon. Velara descended the dais, each step deliberate, her flowing robes trailing behind her. She stopped just before him, her gaze never leaving his. You saved my life when you had no reason to. No duty, no obligation, only kindness. Dorian exhaled softly. Anyone would have done the same, he said, voice measured. Velara shook her head. No. Not anyone. The universe is filled with those who would turn away, who would leave a stranger to their fate. But you didn't. The crowd remained tense, uncertain of what this meant. A princess openly acknowledging a human rescuer was already a disruption of tradition. But what came next shattered everything. Velara knelt before Dorian. The gasps were louder this time, a ripple of shock that spread through the room like wildfire. A princess of Zevathia did not kneel. Not before warriors. Not before leaders. Certainly not before a human. I swore that I would repay the life you gave me, she said, voice steady despite the tension in the air. I swore that the galaxy would know what you did for me. Her golden eyes burned with conviction. I swore that one day, if I had the power to, I would offer you the highest honor in my empire. She turned her gaze toward the crowd, rising to her feet with regal grace. From this day forward, Captain Dorian Hale is no longer an outsider to Zevathia. He is no longer just a human. By my right as heir to the throne, I grant him the title of honorary guardian of the empire. The silence was deafening. Then, an uproar. Protests, disbelief, a mixture of admiration and outrage. The title of guardian was sacred, reserved only for Zevathian heroes. A human had never held such an honor. A heavy, armored figure stepped forward from the noble ranks. General Orvik, one of the most revered warriors of Zevathia. Princess, this is, highly unorthodox, he said cautiously. The guardian title is mine to bestow, Velara cut in. I know our traditions, General. But I also know that honor is not bound by species or lineage. Dorian, who had remained quiet, finally spoke. Princess. I don't need a title. I didn't save you for a reward. Valera's expression softened. I know. That is why you deserve it. The weight of her words settled upon the hall. Slowly, a few nobles began to nod in agreement. A handful of Zevathians tapped their fists to their chests in a gesture of respect. Resistance lingered, but the tide was shifting. Dorian looked at Velara for a long moment before letting out a quiet chuckle. Guess I should get used to bowing to royalty. Velara smiled. I should say the same. But you did not bow to me then, and you need not do so now. The ceremony concluded with mixed reactions, but one thing was certain, history had been made that day. A human had been welcomed into the heart of the Zevathian Empire, not as an outsider, but as one of their own. And as Velara looked at Dorian, she knew this was only the beginning.